Synth uses 2 analog oscillators and a noise generator for its sound generation. Start your custom sound design here. To edit the oscillator section, touch the oscillator button at the top left of the 4x4 programming matrix. Then the 4 knobs will edit the corresponding parameters in the oscillator row. Wave 1 and Wave 2 to set the shape of each oscillator's waveform, and Tune 1 and Tune 2 to tune each oscillator in cents or semitones depending on the knob position. Hold the oscillator button until the oscillator LED flashes, then you can edit the mixer volumes for each oscillator and the noise generator. Touch the oscillator button again to exit the mixer and go back to the oscillator waveform selection and tuning controls. Let's start by editing just one oscillator. We'll turn off oscillator 2 and the noise generator so we can hear just oscillator 1 by itself. We'll put oscillator 1 at a level of 115, a good, reasonably hot level that doesn't overdrive the filter input too much. Touch the oscillator button once again to exit the mixer. Now we can listen to the various wave shapes of oscillator 1 on its own. You can choose from triangle, sawtooth, square, and a 90% pulse, or any shape in between. The Synth has continuously variable oscillator waveform shapes, which means that you can morph from a triangle wave to a sawtooth wave, from a sawtooth wave to a square wave, and then vary the duty cycle, or pulse width, of the square wave from a 50% duty cycle at the square setting to up to a 90% duty cycle at the pulse setting. Then the Tune 1 knob controls the tuning of oscillator 1. Starting from the 12 o'clock position, you can move the knob clockwise to tune the oscillator sharp and counterclockwise to tune it flat. The tuning values are in cents, plus and minus 100 cents in each direction. After 100 cents, the knob shows quantized semitone values so that you can transpose the oscillator in half steps, up to an octave, in each direction. It's the same for Wave 2 and Tune 2. So now that we know what these 4 oscillator knobs do, let's listen to the wave shapes and go into more detail about those. Here's the triangle wave. It's a very pure, simple, clean tone with few harmonics above the fundamental. Now, as we turn the knob, we start to move toward a sawtooth wave shape, which is more string-like and full as we add all the harmonics above the fundamental. You can hear the harmonic content of the oscillator change as we vary the wave shape here. Now we can move from the sawtooth to square. You can hear the even harmonics being reduced as we get closer to the pure square waveform, which consists of only odd harmonics above the fundamental. The square setting has a 50% duty cycle, also known as pulse width. This means that the high part of the wave is the same length as the low part of the wave. If we continue to move the Wave 1 knob, we start to increase the pulse width. This thins out the tone and creates more of a plucked string sound like a guitar or clavinet. When we get to the maximum pulse width at the end of the knob range, the display will show pulse to indicate the 90% pulse width. So we can set the oscillator to a fixed wave shape by turning the Wave 1 knob to the desired setting. But the Synth lets you take this further. We can use the LFO or the filter envelope to modulate the shape of the oscillator wave over time. Set the oscillator wave shape to the sawtooth setting, which is between the triangle and the square. This will allow the LFO to modulate the full shape between triangle and square at its maximum modulation value, crossing through the sawtooth shape along the way. Then to get the LFO to modulate the shape of oscillator 1, you must send a MIDI continuous controller number 75 message from your computer, mobile device, or external MIDI controller, such as a controller keyboard. Use MIDI CC76 to modulate the wave shape of oscillator 2. Similarly, you can modulate the pulse width of the square wave. Set the Synth wave shape about halfway between square and pulse, which is halfway between the 50% and 90% duty cycles. Now use MIDI continuous controller number 73 to set the amount of pulse width modulation. At the maximum modulation value, the LFO will modulate the pulse width between 50 and 90%, and you'll hear a clear harmonic shifting sound from one single oscillator that resembles the sound of two oscillators beating and phasing against each other. So we've talked about how to use the LFO to modulate the shape of the oscillator wave. We can also use the filter envelope to modulate the wave shape. With the filter envelope, instead of a cyclical modulation, we can sweep the oscillator wave shape every time we play a new note. The attack stage of the filter envelope will increase the wave shape setting, moving toward the square shape, and the decay stage of the filter envelope will decrease the wave shape setting, moving toward the triangle shape. Use MIDI CC number 50 and 51 to let the filter envelope modulate the shape of oscillator 1 and 2 respectively. And of course, you can do the same thing with modulating the pulse width.